Aisha froze at the gate, tears stinging her eyes as her grandfather whispered something she never expected to hear. "My child, why did you come by taxi? What happened to the BMW we proudly gave you?" She wanted to answer. But how do you explain that the people smiling beside you are the same people who set your life on fire? Aisha stepped into her grandparents' estate with a small, hopeful smile, thinking they would rush to hug her like they always did. She had stayed away for months, and all she wanted was a moment of warmth. But the moment her feet touched the compound, something felt wrong. The air was heavy. Everyone was standing still, staring at her, not with love, but with confusion and quiet disappointment. Her grandfather looked at her with tired eyes, as if he was carrying a question he didn't want to ask. Beside him, Kamal stood with a fake innocent smile, holding the BMW keys between his fingers like a trophy. The same car her grandparents had gifted her with so much pride. Kamal slightly lifted the keys, smirking as if he already knew what story would be told about her. Aisha's heart dropped. She had come here ready to hide her pain, ready to pretend everything was fine. She thought she would just greet them, sit down, and enjoy the peace she had missed so much. But now the whole family was staring at her, waiting for her to explain why she arrived in a taxi instead of driving the BMW, waiting for her to defend herself, waiting for her to say something that would break her grandparents' hearts even more. Her grandmother whispered her name softly, confused. Her grandfather took a small step forward and asked, with a trembling voice, why she didn't bring the car they gifted her. Aisha felt her throat tighten. She wanted to speak, but the words felt too heavy. How could she tell them that the smiling cousin beside them was the one who destroyed everything? How could she tell them that the people they trusted were the ones who betrayed her? He looked at Kamau. His smile only grew, as if he dared her to expose him. Aisha felt a wave of pain rush through her chest. She had always loved this family, always done her best to protect their peace. Telling the truth right now would shatter it. But staying silent meant they would keep looking at her the way they were looking now, like she had failed them. So she swallowed hard, forcing down the truth she carried alone for months. And as she stood there, surrounded by eyes full of judgment, Aisha realized something heartbreaking. Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from strangers, but from the people you share blood with. 3 months earlier, life felt peaceful for Aisha. Everyone in the family praised her. She worked hard, never showed off, and always treated her elders with respect. Her grandparents loved telling people how proud they were of her. When they gave her the BMW, it wasn't just a gift. It was their way of saying, "We trust you. We believe in you." Aisha felt honored every time she held the keys. She drove carefully, cleaned the car herself, and always thanked her grandparents for giving her something so precious. But inside the house, not everyone was happy for her. At first, Aisha didn't notice. She smiled at everyone, shared anything she had, and believed that family meant safety. She never thought someone close to her could turn her joy into pain. But small whispers slowly started spreading. Soft words behind her back, quick looks, quiet laughter whenever she passed by. She thought she was imagining it. She told herself they were just joking or she was overthinking. But the truth was darker. Kamau and his siblings watched her receive love and respect that they wanted for themselves. They hated how the elders compared them to her. They hated how everyone trusted her more. Their jealousy didn't happen in one day. It grew slowly, silently, until it turned into something dangerous. They started planning ways to destroy her image, to make the elders doubt her, to make her look careless and irresponsible. Aisha remained innocent, unaware that her own cousins were turning into enemies under her roof. While she worked late nights and tried to help everyone, they watched her with cold eyes. While she prayed for her family and wished them well, they discussed how to pull her down. They believed that if Aisha fell, they would rise. The first sign came when her documents started disappearing. She thought she misplaced them. Then small things in her room moved around. She told herself she must be tired. But the jealousy in the house was already spreading like fire. They whispered lies to each other, convincing themselves Aisha didn't deserve the BMW, didn't deserve the praise, didn't deserve the trust. And slowly their plan took shape. They would make her look irresponsible. They would make the family question her. And when she finally broke, they would pretend to be the ones helping her. Aisha had no idea that the people she ate with, laughed with, and trusted were preparing to ruin her life. She had no idea a storm was coming, one that would tear apart everything she cherished. Aisha began to feel like something was shifting around her, but she didn't know how to explain it. Small things started going wrong, things she normally never had trouble with. One morning, she woke up and couldn't find the folder that held her important work papers. She looked everywhere, under her bed, inside her drawers, even in the living room, but it was gone. She blamed herself and thought maybe she misplaced it while rushing to work the day before. Then her work laptop suddenly stopped working. The screen flickered, the charger wouldn't connect properly, and important files disappeared. She told herself it must be a technical problem. She even felt guilty, thinking she hadn't taken care of it well enough. She didn't know someone had been in her room while she slept. Soon her phone started acting strange too. Messages from her boss vanished. Emails she needed for meetings were deleted. She thought maybe she accidentally pressed something. She was tired, stressed, and busy. It was easy to believe she had made a mistake, but the truth was waiting to hit her harder than she expected. One afternoon, she went to withdraw money from her bank for a small project she was working on. The moment she checked her balance, her heart almost stopped. Her account was empty. Not low. Not missing a little money. Completely empty. She stood there frozen, unable to breathe properly. She asked the bank for a statement, and what she saw made her hands shake. Someone had been withdrawing money little by little, small enough amounts that she wouldn't notice at first, but together, it drained everything. Before she could recover from that shock, the bank officer asked her about a loan. Aisha frowned, confused. "What loan?" she asked. The officer showed her documents with her name, her ID number, even her signature. Aisha felt like the floor was moving under her. She had never applied for a loan in her life. Someone had stolen her details. Someone had forged her signature. Someone inside the house had access to her things. Her heart pounded as reality slowly pieced itself together. The lost documents, the broken laptop, the missing messages, the empty account, the fake loan. This wasn't bad luck. It wasn't carelessness. Someone was attacking her quietly, bit by bit, hoping she wouldn't notice until her life crumbled. And the most painful part was the truth she didn't want to accept. The enemy was not outside. The enemy was living under the same roof. That night, Aisha was sleeping lightly, her mind still filled with worry from everything happening around her. Suddenly, a familiar engine started outside. It wasn't loud, but she knew that sound better than anyone. The gentle start of the BMW her grandparents had given her. Her eyes flew open. She sat up, listening. The engine grew distant, moving away from the house. Her heart dropped. She rushed out of bed, grabbed her slippers, and ran outside into the cold night air. The driveway was almost empty. The BMW was gone. Completely gone. Only one person was standing there, Kamau. He was barefoot, rubbing his eyes like someone who had just woken up. He looked around with fake confusion, pretending he didn't understand what was happening. Aisha stared at him, her chest tight. She wanted to scream, to ask him what he did, but her words got stuck in her throat. He looked at her like she was the crazy one for panicking. "Did you hear anything?" she whispered. Kamau shrugged softly. "I thought it was just a neighbor's car," he said, acting innocent. "Maybe you forgot to lock it? Or maybe you misplaced the keys." Aisha felt tears burn her eyes. She knew she had kept those keys safely. She always did. But he said it so calmly, so gently, that anyone listening would believe him. Aisha went back inside, unable to sleep for the rest of the night. She watched the clock move slowly until morning came. By sunrise, the whole house knew. Her grandmother looked worried. Her grandfather looked disappointed. And the rest of the family stood around, whispering loudly enough for her to hear. When she tried to explain, the elders didn't listen. "How can you be so careless, Aisha?" her aunt asked. Her grandfather sighed heavily, shaking his head. "That car was important, my child." Aisha felt her heart shatter. She had done everything right, yet she was standing there being blamed for something she didn't do. Then Kamau stepped forward, pretending to support her. "Let's not be too hard on her," he said softly. Maybe she misplaced the keys. Anyone can make a mistake." His voice was gentle, thoughtful, exactly the kind of voice elders trust. They nodded, believing every word. They saw him as the reasonable one, the peacemaker. Aisha looked at him, and for the first time, she felt a deep coldness in her chest. He wasn't just jealous. He was dangerous. And everyone believed him without question. In that moment, she realized something painful and clear. She was completely alone. The family she protected, defended, and loved had chosen someone else's lies over her truth. Aisha's life changed almost overnight. After the car disappeared and no one believed her, she stopped arguing. She stopped explaining. She simply packed her feelings deep inside her heart and tried to survive each day quietly. The BMW was gone, and with it, her freedom. Now she took taxis everywhere. Early mornings, late nights, sometimes walking long distances when she didn't have enough money for the fare. Every ride reminded her of what she had lost, but she swallowed the pain and kept moving. To keep herself afloat, she picked up a second job. In the daytime, she worked at her office, forcing herself to smile so people wouldn't ask questions. In the evenings, she helped at a small shop near the main road, arranging shelves, counting items, and sweeping floors until her back hurt. By the time she got home, she was too tired to even change her clothes. Most nights, she fell asleep sitting up, her phone still in her hand, her mind too heavy to rest properly. Her body grew weaker. Her eyes always looked tired. She barely had time to eat, barely had time to breathe. But what hurt the most wasn't the exhaustion. It was the betrayal. Every time she sat alone, she remembered Kamal's smirk, the elders' disappointed faces, and the moment she realized no one would stand beside her. The shame felt like a weight on her chest that never lifted. Sometimes, she wished she could scream the truth. She wished she could tell her grandparents everything. How her documents disappeared, how her money was stolen, how the BMW was taken right in front of her. But every time she imagined their faces, the pain in their eyes, she stopped herself. They were old, fragile, and already worried about many things. They did not deserve another heartbreak. They loved peace, and she didn't want to destroy that peace by exposing the darkness inside their own home. So she carried the burden alone. She kept quiet when relatives whispered about how careless she was. She stayed silent when neighbors asked why she no longer drove her beautiful car. She forced a smile while riding in the back of crowded taxis, pretending everything was fine. Her silence became her shield, not because she was weak, but because she loved her grandparents too much to let the truth crush them. But each day, the weight grew heavier. It pressed against her chest, followed her to work, stayed with her at night, and reminded her that she was fighting a battle no one even knew about. A battle she never asked for. A battle she faced alone. Still, she kept going, even when it hurt. Weeks passed, and Aisha kept her head down, trying to survive each day without letting her emotions control her. She avoided family gatherings, avoided unnecessary conversations, and avoided anything that could reopen her pain. She told herself she was healing, but deep down she knew she was only hiding. Every night, she prayed for strength. Every morning, she forced herself out of bed and pushed through the day. One evening, while returning from work tired and drained, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was a message from one of her aunts. For simple words that made her stomach twist. Grandpa wants everyone home. She read it again. Then again. The message continued. Family gathering. Come early. Aisha felt her hands grow cold. Something didn't feel right. The timing, the tone. The sudden invitation after weeks of silence. It all made her heart beat uneasily. She knew her family too well. They only called her when there was a problem, or when someone wanted to point a finger at her. And after everything that happened, she couldn't shake off the feeling that this meeting was not as innocent as it sounded. She sat on her bed for a long moment, staring at the message. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Part of her wanted to protect herself and stay far away from anything that could bring more pain. But another part, the soft, loyal part, thought of her grandparents. The two people who had always shown her love, even if they didn't know the whole truth. They deserved better than silence. She remembered her grandfather's gentle laugh, her grandmother's warm hugs, the way they always prayed for her before she left for school. Those memories pulled her heart in a direction her mind was scared to follow. She wasn't going for the cousins who betrayed her. She wasn't going for the relatives who judged her. She wasn't going to defend herself or explain anything. She was going for them. Only them. Early the next morning, she dressed simply and tied her hair back. Before leaving the house, she stood still for a moment, breathing deeply. Her heart felt heavy, but she gathered her courage and reminded herself that she wasn't doing this for the people who hurt her. She was doing it for the two people who had raised her with kindness, who taught her honesty, respect, and strength. When she stepped outside and called a taxi, she still felt that strange warning inside her chest. Something was off. Something was waiting. But no matter how much fear tried to stop her, she continued. Because love, even when surrounded by pain, can still push a person forward. And that love was leading her back to the place where everything had fallen apart. When the taxi stopped in front of the gate, Aisha took a deep breath. She paid the driver, straightened her clothes, and tried to prepare herself for whatever waited on the other side. She hoped her grandparents would be the first faces she saw. She hoped she would at least get a warm smile before anything else. But the moment she stepped out, her hope disappeared. Kamau was already there, standing near the gate, as if he had been waiting for her. The second he saw her, he didn't even let her greet anyone. He raised his voice so everyone could hear and said loudly, "Grandpassy? I told you. She already sold the BMW." His words sliced through the air. Before Aisha could even open her mouth, gasps spread across the compound. Relatives turned their heads sharply, their eyes wide with shock and judgment. Some even whispered, covering their mouths as if they were seeing a thief. Others exchanged looks that said, "We knew it. She can't be trusted." Aisha felt herself freeze. It was like the world had stopped moving. She hadn't even taken 2 full steps into the compound, yet she was already being accused of something she didn't do. And the worst part, Kamau's lie came so easily, so confidently, as if he had practiced it. Her grandfather stepped forward slowly. His shoulders were heavy. His eyes were filled with pain, not anger. He looked at her like someone looking at a child who had broken their heart. That expression, it hurt Aisha more than anything Kamau had done. She felt her knees weaken, her hands trembling slightly. Shame, confusion, and heartbreak rushed into her all at once. For a moment, she wanted to cry, to run away, to disappear. But something inside her stopped her this time. Something she had learned the hard way over the past months. Silence had protected her family, yes, but it had also protected the people hurting her. She remembered all the times she stayed quiet, hoping things would fix themselves. She remembered how Kamau used her silence to build lies and make himself look innocent. She remembered how everyone believed his words because she never spoke up. And in that moment, standing at the gate, surrounded by accusing eyes, she understood clearly. Silence only gives power to the wrong people. So instead of shrinking, she lifted her chin. Instead of stepping back, she stepped forward. Her heart was shaking, but her voice, when she finally spoke, was stronger than the fear inside her. Because this time she refused to let someone else write her story. Aisha took a slow, steadying breath. Her legs felt like they were made of stone, but she lifted her chin and stepped forward. She looked at everyone's faces, the shocked relatives, the whispering cousins, the disappointed aunts, and most of all, her grandfather's trembling eyes. For months, she had carried the weight of lies, humiliation, and betrayal inside her. Today, she decided she would no longer hide the truth. "No, I didn't sell the car," she said clearly, her voice strong despite the shaking in her chest. "But I know who did." The compound went completely silent. Even the wind seemed to stop as everyone turned their attention to her. Aisha could feel the tension pressing on her like a heavy blanket, but she refused to step back. This was the moment to speak what had been buried inside her for too long. She reached into her bag and pulled out folders, envelopes, and a small USB drive. "For months, I have been keeping evidence," she said. "Evidence of everything that was done behind my back." She placed the papers on the table in front of her grandfather. She opened the envelopes one by one, showing fake loan documents in her name, withdrawals from her bank account that she never authorized, and photos proving her documents were moved or destroyed. She connected the USB to the TV in the living room and pressed play. CCTV footage appeared, showing Kamau driving the BMW at night, carefully avoiding the camera until he parked it at his friend's garage. Every person in the room stared in disbelief, their eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Gasps echoed from corner to corner, but this time, the shock wasn't directed at her. It was directed at him. Kamau tried to speak, tried to laugh it off, tried to act innocent, But every lie he had built crumbled in seconds. Aisha watched him falter, the confident smirk he always wore disappearing. Her grandfather leaned heavily on his cane, his hands trembling. But it wasn't anger that shook him. It was heartbreak. Heartbreak for the betrayal that had happened under his roof, heartbreak for the months his granddaughter had suffered silently, and heartbreak that someone he loved so dearly had been deceived by his own family. He looked at Aisha, tears forming in his eyes, and whispered, "My child. I should have known. I should have seen it." Aisha's chest felt tight, but a small wave of relief washed over her. For the first time in months, she no longer carried the burden alone. She had spoken the truth. She had shown the world the reality, and no one could take that from her now. The lies that had tormented her, the whispers that had haunted her sleep, the false accusations, they were all exposed. For the first time, Aisha realized, the truth doesn't just free you. It makes others see who the real wrongdoers are. And in that room, at that moment, everyone finally saw Kamau for what he truly was. Kamau's face went pale as everyone turned toward him, eyes wide and accusing. He opened his mouth to speak, trying to lie through his teeth. I didn't do anything. She's making this up," he stammered, looking around for support. But the room stayed silent. His cousins shifted uncomfortably. Even some of the relatives who had quietly cheered for him before now avoided his gaze. When his first lie didn't work, he tried another tactic. He pointed at Aisha, his voice shaking but loud. "Maybe she lost the car herself. Maybe she's hiding the truth to make me look bad." A hush fell over the compound. Gasps and murmurs rose as people turned to look at Aisha. But she stood tall, unwavering. She had already shown the evidence, and the proof was clear. She didn't need to argue further. Her silence now spoke louder than anything Kamau could say. Her grandfather leaned on his cane, eyes sharp and full of authority. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady and firm. "Enough," he said, and the room immediately went quiet. Everyone waited. "Kamau," he continued, "you have lied, betrayed, and used your family for your selfish gain. You have broken the trust we placed in you. That trust is gone." No one had expected what came next. "From this day forward," her grandfather declared, "you are cut off. All responsibilities, all privileges, and every part of the inheritance, gone. You will not have any claim to anything in this house." The words hung in the air like a heavy curtain. Kamau's lips trembled, his confident smirk now replaced with panic. He tried to protest, but no one listened. The elders had already made up their minds. The family had seen the evidence, watched the videos, and understood the truth. There was no coming back for him. Then her grandfather added, almost quietly, but so everyone could hear. "And the BMW? It was found, abandoned in your friend's garage. It is yours to return to the rightful owner." Aisha felt a small smile form on her lips. The car she loved, the car she had lost through no fault of her own, would finally be back where it belonged. Kamau's face fell entirely, the shame and fear now written clearly for everyone to see. He had tried to manipulate, lie, and blame, but nothing could undo the truth, and nothing could undo the consequences of his actions. The room was quiet except for the soft sighs of relief and the occasional whisper of amazement. Everyone could see that justice had finally been done. Kamau had underestimated the strength of truth and the courage of someone he thought he could destroy. And now, the power he had tried to steal from Aisha was restored to its rightful place. Aisha took a deep breath as her grandfather handed her the BMW keys. She looked down at them for a moment, her fingers brushing over the smooth metal, then up at him. She didn't feel anger or a desire for revenge against Kamau. That part of her had passed long ago. All she felt was calm, a quiet strength that came from finally standing up for herself. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered softly, her voice full of relief and gratitude. Her grandfather squeezed her hand gently, a warm, proud smile spreading across his face. "My child," he said, "you came by taxi today, but you leave with dignity." Aisha let herself smile, a real smile that reached her eyes. It wasn't about the car anymore. It wasn't about the months of humiliation or the lies she had endured. It was about reclaiming her life, her truth, and the respect she had for herself. For so long, silence and betrayal had tried to weigh her down, but now she felt light, free. She looked around at the family, at the people who had doubted her, and for the first time, She didn't feel small or afraid. She didn't need anyone's approval. She had proven to herself, and quietly, to everyone else, that the truth could never be stolen from her. She had survived the lies, the jealousy, and the betrayal. She had survived Kamau. The BMW gleamed in the sunlight, parked neatly in the driveway, but Aisha didn't feel pride in the car itself. The car was just a symbol that she had been wronged and that she had overcome it. She had returned to the place where she had been humiliated, but she left with her head held high, untouched by the shame others had tried to place on her. Her grandfather stood beside her, watching silently. He didn't need to say anything else. His presence, his faith in her, had carried her through the darkest moments. She felt his hand tighten briefly on hers, a silent acknowledgement of love, trust, and pride. Aisha climbed into the BMW slowly, her heart steady. She started the engine, but she didn't rush off. She sat for a moment, taking in the sight of the estate, the faces of those who had witnessed the truth, and the journey that had brought her here. She whispered again quietly, mostly to herself, "No one can take this from me again." As she drove away, the sunlight bounced off the windshield, and Aisha felt a peace she hadn't known in months. She hadn't needed revenge. She hadn't needed to shout or accuse. She had only needed to speak the truth, to stand tall, and to walk away knowing that no amount of lies could ever touch her again. And for the first time in a long while she felt completely, undeniably whole.